Okay, so the thing for today, which I'm supposed to do on Zoom, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay on that long without interruption, um, is this idea of the brothers get acquainted. That was for today. So the main thing with the brothers get acquainted for today, because I'm going to have to get back to the brain treatment pretty soon, so I'm going to have to pretty much call it, I think, pretty soon. But let's hit the main things that are talking about. So we know in the plot, right? Alyosha meets Ivan at the place where he's eating. They're not in a private room, as Smerdyakov said. We know that Ivan listens very, very carefully to the story that Alyosha tells him about Smerdyakov, and he even says "devil take it." Right? He knows that Smerdyakov is playing some kind of game. Right? That there's definitely something going on that's wrong with Smerdyakov. He orders Alyosha some food. He even remembers some of the food he liked as a child. He tells him, "I remember everything," and and there's a lot of fondness. He's trying to show a lot of fondness. When Ivan left, he was 15, and Alyosha was 11. And he says, "At such ages, brothers are never friends." Right? And the idea is, he says, he's sorry that they weren't close, but because of the age difference they had, that they were going to be hostile. And there were a lot of things that Ivan says, and kind of in his prelude to the two major chapters that are coming up. Rebellion, which hopefully we'll be able to talk about on Wednesday. And the Grand Inquisitor, which we'll talk about on Friday. Anyway, the main thing that Ivan talks about, he talks about the idea of one should love life before understanding it or loving its meaning, right? This is a really important idea. Basically, Ivan, who's the great intellectual, one of the things that he does, and this is his ability to be like, as we said earlier, like Shakespeare, maintain the tension, is he suggests that the truth of life is not really graspable by a three-dimensional mind, right? That one cannot really grasp infinite truth. So you shouldn't love life for its meaning, because its meaning is beyond comprehension. You should love life for itself. And this is the statement of someone who would be a centralist, right? This sounds like something Dmitri might say. And yet Ivan, the intellectual, right? He's saying, I have wasted my life because I haven't been a centralist, and I need to start being a centralist. I need to start enjoying myself. I'm still very green in life. I'm still very inexperienced. I haven't drunk the cup. But what Ivan says, and at this point he's about 24 years old, or maybe 23, he says, "I shall drink the cup until 30, then throw it away." He's basically saying, I should just have as much as I can have out of life, get all the pleasures and all the different things I can possibly get out of life until 30, and then throw it away. And in that, he's hinting about suicide. Ivan is saying his plan of life is to spend the next 6-7 years just getting as much out of life as one can, but life is fundamentally meaningless. And then at 30, because it is just a complete wretch to remain depraved and wretched, like their father, who wants to keep being perverse and wretched until he's 70, if not 80. He says the decent thing then is to end it all, right? To just to throw oneself into life and then end it all. And that's, party till I'm 30 and then kill myself. That is Ivan's plan. That is the plan that he's suggesting to Alyosha that he should do. And the interesting thing is that here's what he would say. He would say, "I have been thinking to myself, my 23-year-old greenness, and suddenly you guessed it exactly. I've been sitting here now. I did not believe in life. If I were to lose faith in the order of things, even if I were to become convinced on the contrary that everything is a disorderly, damned, and perhaps devilish chaos, which, by the way, is something he's wrestling with, if I were struck even by all the horrors of human disillusionment, still I would want to live as long as I have bent to this cup. I will not tear myself from it until I've drunk it all. So Ivan says, right, one should live even if everything is disorder and evil and random chaos, even if there is no such thing as good, right? One should live, at least until one has drank the cup full. But the idea then, right, the idea that is being put forward, and this is the thing that I was wanting to talk to you about and get your thing is, right, is if life is meaningless, right, at least live as long as you can enjoying it, right? That's the general thing that Ivan is saying. But then, right, if you can't enjoy it without meaning, the only dignified thing to do is die, right? And that is Ivan's position, right? That if there is no, and he says, I'm going to go away. I'm planning on leaving and not coming back. This will be the last time you see me. But he says, but I do want to come back at some point before I'm 30 and give you the chance to convince me not to kill myself. Right. And that's such a strange, I mean, again, this book is so melodramatic. Alyosha, I promise I'll give you the opportunity to convince me to try not to kill myself. And you know, this idea of, you know, what about love? What about how people feel? He talks about how he fell in love with someone, but he also says, you know, don't get into arguments about love. Love is a waste of time. And yet, when he says love is a waste of time, we sense that Ivan has been very wounded by the people who he's loved as well. And so, once again, right, the conversation, we see that Ivan is going to once again, in this case, he's going to resemble Smerdyakov. He's going to say, am I my brother's keeper? Right? And which Smerdyakov says the same thing. However, Ivan says it with self-awareness, meaning he knows that he's quoting Cain. He's like, I realize I'm quoting Cain, and that's a terrible thing that I'm quoting Cain. So again, Ivan, right, he's studied more theology than Alyosha has, but he is less convinced because once again, right, he's again speaking from a place of being an orphan in a different way, right? We know that Ivan got upset when Alyosha broke down crying when Theodore was talking about their mother. He says, you know, she was my mother too. And that was something that the father forgot. He forgot that they were full brothers. And the other thing, and the thing that we're going to talk about is the questions on love and life and everything else about it is, you know, it's this idea of, you know, kind of speaking about from different perspectives of fatherhood and the orphan spirit, right? And in that sense, Ivan and Smerdyakov are actually very similar to one another. They're both kind of living this orphan spirit, and so is Dmitri. But the key difference is that at least Ivan is aware of it. He has a lot more self-awareness than Smerdyakov does, and he knows that he's wretched, but he's not going to ask on it or act on a lot of that wretchedness. And the question becomes, right, you know, is there such a thing as immortality? Is there such a thing as the existence of God? And one of the things, he wants to say, I avoid all hypotheses, right? He's like, if God exists and if he indeed created the earth, then, as we all know perfectly well, he created in accordance with Euclidean geometry, and he created human reason with a conception of only 3 dimensions of space. At the same time, there were, and even now, geometers and philosophers, and even some of the most outstanding among them, who doubt that the whole universe, or even more broadly, the whole of being, was created purely in accordance with Euclidean geometry. They even dare to dream between 2 parallel lines, which, according to Euclid, cannot possibly meet on Earth, may perhaps meet somewhere in infinity. I, my dear, have come to the conclusion that if I cannot understand that then it is not for me to understand about God. So, right, the thing that Ivan says, and this is the difference between him and Smirdyakov. This is a very, very important thing. They're both kind of orphans, right? They both feel like orphans, but right, Ivan, when he talks about parallel lines getting together, he sees the impossible coming true, right? And the thing is, he doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand. He's like, look, if redemption is possible, if resurrection is possible, it's like if immortality is possible, then it's like two parallel lines coming together, right? That is not something I can understand. And therefore, if it is not something I can understand, how can I judge it with my mind as impressive as I am? And here's but the difference is, right, is that, and this is the attitude difference between Smirdyakov and Ivan. Smirdyakov, as you remember, when he talked about light and the creation of the world, right? Smirdyakov dismisses mystery and the impossible with contempt, right? He's like, yeah, I don't even care about religion. This is all, nonsense, parallel lines coming together. And he just dismisses it entirely. Ivan, on the other hand, he sees there's something beautiful and mysterious about it, right? There is something about it that still intrigues Ivan, because Ivan is the true intellectual, right? And here's the difference, right? Is that Ivan, right? Ivan, even though intellectual living may be useless in eternal questions, right? For Ivan, there is still pleasure in life itself, right? There's something beautiful about trying to contemplate geometry. There's something beautiful in trying to contemplate eternal questions, right? Smirdyakov doesn't have that. He doesn't have the love of life and lust for life that Ivan has. So the difference is, even though both Smirdyakov and Ivan are atheists, both Smirdyakov and Ivan in some ways dismiss a lot of the things that other people don't dismiss. Ivan still loves life. And because he loves life, he wants to believe, right, that maybe immortality can be real. Maybe the two parallel lines, maybe they can come true. But he also says, right, and this is what he says: I have a childlike conviction that the sufferings will be healed and smoothed over, that the whole offensive comedy of human contradictions will disappear like a pitiful mirage, a vile concoction of man's Euclidean mind, feeble and puny as an atom, and that ultimately at the word's finale, in the moment of eternal harmony, there will occur and be revealed something so precious that it will suffice for all hearts, to allay all indignation, to redeem all human villainy, all bloodshed. It will suffice not only to make forgiveness possible, but also to justify everything that has happened with men. Let all this come true and be revealed, but I do not accept it, and I do not want to accept it. Let the parallel lines even meet before my own eyes. I shall look and say, yes, they meet, and I still will not accept it. That is my essence, Alyosha. That is my thesis. I say to you in all seriousness, I purposely started this talk of ours as stupidly as possible, but I arrived at my confession because my confession is all you need. You did not need to know about God. You only need to know what your beloved brother lives by, and I've told you. Ivan ended this long tirade with sudden and unexpected feeling, right? So this is the paradox of it, right? A part of him believes, right, all will be well. I'm using this phrase, all will be well, from St. Julian of Norwich. Maybe it's Blessed Julian of Norwich, spelled Norwich, right? And she talks in her mystical writings about how somehow all will be well at the end of time, that God will do something that even with all the evil that's been done, somehow all of the good will come together. Everything can be forgiven, everything can be justified, everything can ultimately work for the greater glory of God and for the salvation of souls in the end. And Ivan says, yeah, I actually kind of believe that with a childlike faith, right, beyond my reason that this thing can come true. He says, but even if I see it, I must reject it. Right? And this is Ivan. He must oppose it. Because Ivan, even if that were true, Ivan, even though he's with his Euclidean mind, he doesn't know how he can understand God. But he says, there's just something about this that's not right. And even if God wants to say, look, see, it all came together in the end. Even I have made the impossible possible. Even then still, right, Ivan says, you know what? I don't trust it. I don't trust it. So there is a basic refusal in Ivan, right? A refusal of the greater plan, even in the face of the resurrection. And this is the thing that most people, right? This is the thing most people don't get about Ivan, and it's why Ivan is such a magnificent character, and it's what the next 2 chapters are going to be about. How can someone say, even if God were to make the impossible possible, and he were to show all of his glory and everything were to be made manifest, and all sin can be overcome, all evil can be overcome, all bloodshed can be overcome, I still have to say no. I still must refuse. And that is the essence of Ivan, that I must refuse. I still must refuse. As the philosopher, as the existentialist, as everything else. And to understand that, to understand how can someone see all that and still say no, and still feel the need, the imperative to say no, still even then I would. And this again, right, this is connected to the idea of strain, right? Strain, egoism, pride, owning oneself, orphan spirit, being unconnected to fatherhood, family, others, right? But the nature of Ivan's objection, even if, God could make everything well in the end, that is what makes Ivan a fabulous character. And that is what you will have to look at in the end. And that's what the next 2 chapters are going to be about in detail. So that's basically what we're going to have to be talking about over the next week. So I think I'm going to need to lay down for a while, but I'm going to post these for today. And I'm sorry about the Zoom. And I will get the questions for this section up for the Brothers Get Acquainted, and that will be due for Wednesday.